Oh, hello guys, welcome back. Happy Half Price Candy Day. It's Easter Monday, and it was always a huge tradition in our family to go out the day after Easter and buy up all the Easter candy we could because we loved our Easter candy because it usually only comes out once a year, that novelty kind of candy. And it was usually dirt cheap. It used to be dirt cheap. Now I notice stores are like almost keeping the full price, but it used to be dirt cheap. So happy Half Price Candy Day. The box, by the way, if it's bothering you, is nowhere near full. That's most paper and bluster, but it looks pretty impressive. So we had a wonderful day yesterday. I called my friends and I thought maybe I was like borderline okay to go out, but they were like, no, you stay home. They brought me this huge tray, guys, big as my dish rack. Had the Easter dinner on it with the ham and the potatoes and the green beans. Had bread, had, like these little buns they make, had pickled eggs and beets, had a huge slice of cake, this delicious cake with a rabbit ring in it, which was cute. Look, he got the rabbit ring. And there was other stuff on there too. I can't even remember, but this was, a lot of food. A salad. There was a salad on there too. And it was delicious, and I really appreciate it. And I put together a bag of candy for them, and I sent it up with them. So they got the candy, and I got the food. And I really did want to take her tray right back up, so I remember to do it. And I'm longing after this tray. This is a nice tray, but I'm like, that's not yours. You take it back. So I'm going to have to take it back to her. And it was a really great day. And I did the thing where I always talk to my mom, not my dad so much, because he was the abuser of the family. And I talked to whomever. And since it was also sadly a day of tragedy, I will talk to it. I will not use that term, Loki. He's like, don't you dare use that term. Talk to the former deity. And we reached an understanding. And I think Odin had been pulling a lot of Odin mischiefs because, one, Odin is a trickster deity. He is a trickster deity. He hides it really well because he's usually pretty calm and sedate, and tricksters are usually banging off the walls crazy, like Loki. Loki's like, aha! And Loki can be serious, and you can just be looking at him, and you're almost waiting for it, right? But Loki does have serious past too, but I usually get the little goofball that's like he hit his head and was dropped on his divine head as a child. And I think Odin was doing his trickster stuff to make sure I got all the garbage and all the dogma of the church out of me. He was like, we're going to do trickster stuff, and I'm not going to tell you. So I was talking to Jesus. Yes, I know. The gods are going to get me. And I was talking to all and sundry, and I was offering my empathy. And Loki was like poking me, and Odin's poking me, because those two are my boss man. All the gods might love me and adore me, but those two are like my main deities, and they're like, what's the matter with you? Hospitality, hospitality. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm like, you want to stay for a while? Come, stay. We have the room. You're losing churches. Church attendance seems to be at an all-time low. I said, it's the fault of the church. It's a dogma they don't like. It's not you. Don't take this personally, Lord. It's not you. It's the dogma they don't like. They haven't changed this stuff in 2,000 years. It needs an update. And that's the thing. People have been talking about for decades, since at least the 70s, and even long before that, for hundreds of years, that they really need to update their dogma. They really need to bring it into the modern times for modern people. We can't stone our neighbors to death, or have slaves, or do any of this other stuff that was perfectly acceptable in that culture and time. We can't do this shit. At least we shouldn't. Men shouldn't own women and children as property. We shouldn't do this stuff. And so we have to remember that for our own lore as well. Thor had slaves in his story. That is not good, but that was the culture at the time. There are horrible elements of these cultures left over in our stories, and we have to remember that reflected the culture, that didn't reflect the divinities. So we actually had a really nice time. The Jesus I know is really funny, really earthy. Kind of laughs at how the church came out, not in a, like, mean way, but kind of like, I didn't say any of that. And I'm like, I know you didn't say any of that. Um, and he and Dionysus seem to get along quite well. And you know Loki. Loki is the father fox. Loki's the dog fox. So if he sees a baby or he sees anyone in trouble, he's dragging them to you and you fix this. You fix this thing. So it was like we did a lot of whatever we could do. I don't want to say triage because gods will be just fine, you know, being gods, but it was like we have the power to talk to whoever we want. And the more and more you get away from dogma, the more liberating it is. Now, I did have this weirdest dream this morning that felt terrible. And in my dream, Jesus is trying to talk to me and tell me something very, very important. And I'm in a theater and am having this panic attack in the theater and I cannot hear him for this huge panic. And there's all this sound, yet the theater's empty and there's like the red curtain. You can tell a show's supposed to start. And Jesus is trying to give me advice and tell me, like in the dream I heard it, now I don't know what he said, but it was like he was trying to tell me and advise me through this and talk me through this thing. And I think it was just all those decades of guilt and being taught what a bad person you are, not only by Catholics. People always go, well, that's what's wrong with Catholics. Pagans do the same exact thing. Pagans, if they see you doing anything they don't want you to do, they do the same exact thing. They just heap a bunch of guilt on you and they tell you the gods will cry or the gods will be angry or the gods will abandon you. No, they won't. They're big gods. They can stand up for themselves. And I haven't said it in a while, guys, but if you don't ever agree with anything I say, that's fine. Check it through your own gods. Check it through your own personal experience, but make sure it's the gods you're talking to. Not that I speak for the gods, I don't. And not yourself, because I fall into that trap myself. I start answering myself in God's voice, and I always know it's me, usually, because it's usually something negative. So, it doesn't mean that our gods won't correct us, but if it's negative or condemning you or something else, it's probably you talking to yourself in a God's voice. We all have that talent, unfortunately. And so today I get up, and I'm feeling kind of ambivalent, but I'm greeting all and sundry, and I'm like, oh, I'll take her tray up. And this thing came up on chimpanzees, and you guys know that was the one animal I was like kind of terrified of because I had 2 encounters with male chimps, really close encounters where I'm really glad there was fencing. And they were putting on natural displays that they will put on when they're in unnatural conditions. If you put a chimp in very tiny quarters, and that's the only chimp, they basically lose their damn mind is what happens to them. It's like just like putting a human in isolation. They don't have our brain capacity, but they do have our need to be in a group setting, of some kind of group setting. And what these males were telling me is that they were frightened and they were scared and they were going to try to be big and intimidating and they were screaming, and it was actually kind of a call for help because they're a highly evolved species. Not as high as ours, but highly evolved. In fact, this chimp stuff popped up, and they show this elderly chimp, this matriarch, dying, and then they show more about what we actually know about chimps now, which are remarkably close to wolves, so I kind of like them more. And they're like, no, the alpha chimp is actually the nurturing one. And if you're seeing all this bad behavior, it's because the chimps are being treated poorly in that enclosure, and maybe they're being, they didn't say it, but I'm like, well, maybe they were antagonizing those poor animals so they would act ferocious, because apparently that's not, normal. They can put displays on stuff too, but they're a complicated species like wolves. And then I went to this other thing, and they can learn to cook. No, they can learn to cook, not like a trained chimp where you've seen it been taught to cook and do tricks. That's a little different. But they can be taught to cook potatoes in these simple devices, and that's remarkable because it calls for knowing something will change and having forward planning and all this other stuff. Now, they don't cook because, one, they can't use fire. They haven't mastered fire. You have to be a little tiny bit smarter than a chimp to use fire and use it safely and figure out how to cook with it. And 2, in the wild, it's not practical because if they're holding on to food too long, a more aggressive, more dominant chimp will just come along and take it. They're not the perfect sunshine species. So in the wild, it makes sense if you found this bit of food, you eat this food because the other chimps might come and take it away from them, which is why I prefer bonobos. They're down to floof with absolutely anyone, and they're like way more chill. They solve their aggression problems with sex. I'm like, that's my species. But it was funny that came up because that was like a healing thing too, and just a lot of other stuff came up. So it's like all this healing stuff is coming to the surface. And I know that's why I had like such a terrible experience this morning. It was like all this garbage, all this impacted garbage that you think you've gotten rid of. Every so often, some of it comes to the surface and you're going to feel terrible, but it comes up and out and you'll be okay. And of course, I got attacked as soon as I got on YouTube. There were a couple people attacking my channel. And when that happens, once you reach around the 400 sub count, it can even happen at 10 subs. Some people need to get a hobby. People get jealous. People get jealous because you have viewers. People get jealous because you have friends. People get jealous because of whatever you're talking about. And they get nasty and vindictive. And I was thinking, well, Charles should kind of put a smile on your face, because that shows you, one, you're doing well enough for people to be jealous of you, so yay you. And two, it makes you reflect on all the things you do have. I'm like, yeah, I do have a pretty good life. I have a lot of problems like everyone else, but I have friends, I have food, I have running utilities, thank the gods. I have pretty much everything I want. Now, that doesn't mean I stopped manifesting, and there was some manifesting lately that didn't work, so I will tell you the failures. I wanted this wolf, guys. Well, Republic was having this sale, and it was the 30-inch sitting wolf, and that one's normally $70, and if you got it 20% off, that's like 14 off, so 60, like $56 plus free shipping. I'm like, well, that's a lot of money to spend on a plush, but that's a pretty good price, so I'm trying to manifest like crazy, and I'm like, I trust you, universe. The money can come from anywhere. And the universe kind of teased me. The universe was, here's a lawsuit that is happening that you're actually not a part of because you bought something on Amazon they're telling you about. So the universe was teasing me, but the money did not magically appear in my account. And I was so upset because I was like, damn it, if he hadn't tried to sneak in an extra cutting and he hadn't come, I would have just went ahead and bought that wolf. I know I would have. But then I could have been overdrawn too, and there's no protection now because that all went to replace the water heater. So it was like, sometimes you're not going to get everything. And I saw another wolf too, and I'm like, I know I have enough wolves. We have 11 upstairs and we have 4 down here. I officially have enough wolves. But it's like foxes. I could have a few more foxes. We just have foxes all over this house, but I could use a couple more. So, it's been pretty great, and sometimes you just have to let go of all the toxic stuff and let it come up and through you, and it's going to be okay, and you're going to survive it. And I think it's part of the manifesting. It just starts to clean out all the impacted garbage, and it's not our fault, guys. For decades, I was taught by the Catholic Church I was a bad person. And then when you come over to paganism, people are like, oh, you're bad because you were Catholic. You're bad because you do still have feelings for a god or a saint or an angel or whomever you work for. People can bug off. It's why dogma is usually useless, unless it's Dogma the film, which is awesome. But I heard, yay, Buddy Christ! I heard that back here. But yeah, we've been rebuilding the temples. We've been repurposing them. And I said, it's weird that my first reaction is to make a temple of peace and healing, and all 4 are kind of like the same complex now. It would make sense if you would see them. And I said, it's weird every time we get the weapons back into the temple, something happens, and then I'm like, this is totally inappropriate. The world needs healing now. It doesn't need guns and spears and everything in the temple, so Odin's down with that. Odin's like, there are going to be people that are going to be militaristic their whole life, and that's how they're going to guide their worship. And he's like, I need people, and he's not making me special snowflake. He's like, I need healers too. And Loki's like, yeah, healers. So I'm like, me? With my temperament? He's like, you always know you've been a healer. It's just, it wasn't from Christ, and it wasn't from the Buddha or Ganesh or anyone else. It was from working with Odin and Loki. So, and I can't heal people, guys, so please do not start typing, oh, I'm so sick. I can't do that. It's like, you have to get yourself healed first if you're going to seriously do this. And he's like, he's got designs, because Odin's like, he's seeing 8 more temples. I'm like, well, if those come in, we'll go per your design. and we had this experience where Odin was showing me during meditation what they're doing with the temples, and I'm like, this is really impressive. And he's like, yeah, isn't it? Keep this up, keep it coming. So I will keep it coming, guys, because I'm like, if I'm helping out, that's great. And we can all do that. You don't need VR and to build VR temples. You can just sit down and visualize, or treat the gods and other people as well as possible. It all helps. Every culture in the world has some kind of metaphor about good deeds being bricks or mortar or whatever have you that the gods can use to build with. So, be nice for once. So, Lucky's background. Yeah! Most of you guys are pretty nice, but you know what I mean. So, yeah, we had to deal with the trolls, and that wasn't pleasant, but I'm like, that's just people that are jealous of me. Those are people that are jealous of you and hate you. And unfortunately, there's a big toxic part of the YouTube community that encourages jealousy and encourages hatred. Are we all competitors for your time and attention? Yeah, we are, but there's no reason to be hateful and spiteful and mean over it either. So no, I'm never going to have anybody who watches this channel go hurt other people. That's petty beyond belief. So if you guys like what you see, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.